Now that over 70 years, and I think 75 now have passed since World War II has ended, of how much importance do you believe that the topic of the war is to societies today? How important is it to you?
Well, it's important to me because I lived through it. But I think it's important to some people. I think they're interested in history, especially people who are interested in history. I don't think a lot of people are. Um, they'll go through it. They'll say, "Oh yeah, okay," and then move on to something else. Um, Especially nowadays when I think things move so fast that whatever was a headline yesterday, no one even remembers today. Um, uh, I feel sometimes that what's happened to me made me a little stronger. Um, uh, and the only time I felt like, oh my God, it's going to happen again. And I really just, I mean, I almost had to fall apart, was when 9/11 happened. And when all of a sudden, everything closed down and no flights, and we were going to go to war, and God knows what, all this stuff. I thought, oh my God, we're, I can't believe we're at it again, And it took me a while to because then, it was my family was still around. I was worried about what's going to happen with the family, and then slowly, I kind of passed through that. That's the only time I really panicked. Um, but and now, and then one thing that worries me about it is what I went through made me strong. I think made me strong, and I worry about some people now who don't have that strength. It's just especially with this quarantine and going on. I worry sometimes about the younger generation. You're part of that. But I also think your generation is part of the solution to what's going on now. But I also think that part of the problem is that everybody's kind of wimpy. You know, that they, and then in other words, if you don't get satisfied or don't get everything solved right now, everybody panics. Everybody goes crazy. So I've told my grandchildren, it's up to you, your generation, to do something, to get, man, the expression man up, come on, life's, don't be such a wimp. Get a little bit stronger. You can do this. You can get through it, and you can make it a better world. So don't just cower and be soft. That's the only thing that I.
And I guess you mean also like don't let the little things bother you.
Yeah, I mean there are bigger things in life to worry about. Um, you know, uh, so
Yeah, and just focus on the big pictures of the things.
on the big picture. And hey, if you don't see somebody for 2 days, or you don't, or somebody says a mean thing to you, get over it. You know, that just you're right. You've got a goal to reach, and you know what kind of person you are. Be strong and be decisive and get to your point without complaining about everything. You know, and I'm not talking about you personally, Carolyn. I'm just saying that everybody has a gripe. They're always bitching about something. Get over it. Uh, and do something about it, and in a logical way. So maybe I'm getting on my soapbox.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. So yes. Yeah. So I think a lot of your experience can give you some insight into how to handle difficult situations and how to respond.
yeah.
Grow a thicker skin, I guess.
Yeah. You're right. Get a thicker skin. Get a thicker, and uh, yeah. And listen to each other, because I may not agree with you or you may not agree with me, but let's have a dialogue, and let's not, I'm not gonna, so you don't agree with what I say or I don't agree with what you say. Well, let's talk about it. What, how can we solve this problem instead of screaming at each other or getting upset because somebody, I don't know, does something that you don't like. Uh, it just seems like it's that's what worries me the most. And I think that I came through that passage, um, and hopefully I can pass that on to my grandchildren.
So, how important do you think that the remembrance of the war is?
For me, they're important, and I've done something about it. I think it's important historically, for everybody to read about and know about certain historical things that happen. I mean, I'm a history buff, so I really enjoy reading about history and about things that happened in the past. Um, and you learn something from it. Um, uh, and for instance, I just finished a book called The Splendid and the Vile, and it's about Churchill in his first year as prime minister in 1940 to 1941, and about what happened when with the bombing and the Blitz and all this stuff happening. The courage of the people is absolutely amazing, strong. What they went through and how he kept the country together, and how the people were able to withstand this barrage. It's just absolutely mind blowing, and you learn something about whenever you read about that. Or I don't know what I read about, something in, um, oh gosh, what was it lately? Uh, Something's happened somewhere in the world, from way back when, or reading the about the Romans or the Greeks or whatever, or the Chinese philosophers, or reading about the about India or whatever. You gain so much from the knowledge of past events in history. And so I think it is important, and it's important to know about. It's important to learn from it, but I don't know whether that's something that's interests people, but I hope it does.
Yeah, and I think were also going to mention something about your brother. You're right.
Oh, my brother. Well, my oldest brother has a absolute keen interest in the war, and so he's really done a lot of wonderful things, and it's also sprung into something else, because as we were traveling around hearing about about the war, we met a lot of very interesting people. We visited different universities around the Philippines, and from there we met somebody who, oh, at one place we were we were opening out one of these file cabinets, and at the bottom, I think I opened the bottom of the file cabinet, and there were these big reels there. And I said to the professor, what are these? And he said, oh, they're just something from some indigenous people in Mindanao, which is another island. He said it's their chants. It's they don't write anything down, so they chanted their history. And so my brother and I looked at each other and went, wow, can we hear it? Well, it turned out that these things were made so long ago, we had to find a machine that could transcribe them down so that we could listen to it on a disc right now. And it turns out to be these people, these tribal people, who were telling their history, and they were interviewed. And so we thought, well, we've got to listen to all this stuff. So long story short, we got somebody from Manila to come down to transcribe it all. And now it's in a library where people can study it. And we've met the tribal chief. We know what their history. And so from World War II, we're going back to this tribe that's been there since God knows when. And hearing about their history. Then we learned about another tribe in another island who had this, who have their chanting also. So we've gotten that transcribed. And then there's some people up in the mountain province who sang their made musical instruments. So we've got somebody working on that for us. So from World War II, we're back into the tribal areas. I mean, it opens up avenues that we never thought we'd ever see or be interested in. So it's a way of learning more and more and more. It's wonderful. It really
But
is.
your other two brothers are less keen on talking about their experiences during the war.
Well, my one brother does a lot, but the other one doesn't. And then my other brother, who was a little bit older than I was, he passed away when he was only 27 years old. So he doesn't have any, he doesn't have anything to contribute. But so it was my older brother and I who were the ones who were interested, were the ones that pursuing this. So it's been quite a journey, and still going on.
Yeah. And so, how do you think that the way that American society, or perhaps the way that the Philippines remembers the war, should change, if at all?
I'm not so sure I understand that question. How?
Yeah, how American society or the Philippines remembers the war should change, if at all.
Oh, well, I think you still, because now most people who fought in the war are all gone. They're dead. But there's still memories because of the American soldiers who were there before the war and during and after the war, and uh, so yeah, I think there's still a great deal of interest.
I think you also mentioned that in the Philippines, and I think also in the U.S., there's just not a lot of people who learn about this in schools or so.
No, they don't. They absolutely don't. That's why Cecilia's Bataan legacy is so important, and that's why we got them to agree in California to put it into the curriculum. But which happens, of course, now. I don't know what's happening to it now, but and it may spur a little interest, and now there's so much information available online, so people can go and find out a lot more. People like you are doing histories like this, so that's important. So yeah, it's all.
But overall, do you feel that the way that the U.S. or the Philippines or both teaches the war to the younger generation is adequate, or no?
I don't think it's adequate. No, 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 and I don't know when it will be. Um, I don't know.
Yeah. So, are you working like personally to help try to include more of the role of the Philippines during World War II into history textbooks, or?
Yeah, I was out helping with Cecilia on doing this, and what happens now is that every school district has to approve. The process is just long, ongoing, and then it's put in. Well, now I don't even know people use textbooks, but if it could just be online, then it would be. And then give other sources to go to. It doesn't have to be a whole chapter of 10, 20 pages of this. It could be, well, if you want to learn more about this, go here. Or if you want to learn more about this, go there. So it opens up avenues for and some students will be really interested in it, and others could care less. And adults too, that could hopefully it could build up to be something that adults can open up the chapter. And in the Philippines too, which it really should be one of the number one things to be taught, because it happened right there. And so many Filipinos were killed during the war, and families destroyed. And so it should be there, but it isn't. So I don't know. That's up to them.
Yeah, and I think you and your brother and your friend were also concerned about, the lack of coverage of the civilian experience during the war, right?
Yeah, yeah, somewhat, but yeah, because when you look at it, it's not just Manila with lost so civilians. It's all over the Philippines that lost civilians. The civilians were killed by the Japanese in terrible ways in the smaller communities. So it's not it's. I thought somebody said over 1 million people died during the war. Um, so we're not talking about a big, huge. It's huge group of civilians. Yeah, absolutely. Everywhere you go. Um, yeah.